That's okay. Does that seem to be recording? Were you notified that it was recording? I see it now working. All right. So, Gorden, welcome. Thank you for joining me on this call today. Thank you to everyone that is here today. Gorden, we're here today to talk about the book that you've written and that you're launching throughout 2024 here. And as we get started, I want you to talk to us a little bit about, well, first of all, I want to give you an opportunity. Do you see anyone in this Zoom room that you recognize you just want to give a quick shout out to or welcome? I want to give you that opportunity, brother.
Wow, I am very grateful. I am seeing my old colleagues from before. I see Alex, I see my current colleagues, Evelyn, Reverend Angel, Justice, um, Margaret. Yeah, I see my colleagues from other countries, Susan there. In Kenya, I see Dr. Solomon. With the Baha'i Faith at Addis Ababa University. I see another former Act Alliance colleague, Christian, joining from Geneva. Alex is joining from Australia. I see Reverend Faye in South Africa. I see my other colleague, Dr. Tinashe. I see my former classmate, also in BGU, brother Gabriel, now Dr. Gabriel. Yeah, I see Mr. Chambugera Muyeye, who is a colleague. We work together here in Addis Ababa. Yeah, I'm not sure if I see TG Boa. Hi, my former colleague. We were classmates years before. Oh yeah, Muzaya Daki joining in from Zimbabwe in Gweru. Oh wow. I'm very excited and very grateful. Thank you so much for being here today.
So awesome. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us and supporting Gorden today. This is, and I'm sure is encouraging to Gorden. There's 17 of us on the call today. So awesome. Gorden, let's just jump in. I want you to talk to me a little bit. You know, I've been getting to know you through Bakke Graduate University. As I mentioned, the university that we've had our shared academic pursuits through. I'm now the CEO of that university. You're doing the things God's called you to do in the world. You've written this book and you're launching this book. Bakke is a university that's training the Billy Grahams, the Mother Teresas of the world that the world hasn't heard about yet globally. And so I want you to just talk to me a little bit about your origin story, just how you became Gorden, and the era prior to coming to Bakke Graduate University. So you don't have to go into every little detail, but maybe just hone in on something that has formed you in your early years that is connected to God's call on your life at this stage in your life. Just talk to us a little bit about how you came to be you.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's kind of like complicated to kind of like summarize that, but I was born in Zimbabwe, in the Eastern Highlands, and I grew up there until I was about 14 when we moved to Harare, and I have been in the city since then. But I must say that for all my working career, I've been working for faith-based organizations, kind of like not-for-profit organizations. And I must say that I have learned quite a lot in terms of my work experience working with these organizations. They do a lot of deep rooting work in communities, and they have a moral voice. They are heard by communities. People respect them. People respect the work they do. And in fact, in some African countries, if you look at the health sector, the education sector, many other sectors, you actually see that the faith or the church has a lot to do. And they are doing transformation work that is touching on many, many other people's lives and many communities. They are raising standards, they are trailblazing, and they are showing the way. But also, I must say, much of the things that I would say, which you people would read in my book, actually informed by my many years experience working in the faith-based sector. We are not as perfect as we aim to. And sometimes we also have areas where we actually need to improve. And so much of what is in the book, and also the book, when I was doing the research at Parker Graduate University, actually focused on faith-based organizations. I wanted to move into an area that I understand, things that I can question, things that I can engage with people at the same level. And hence I selected also to do my research with two faith-based organizations based in Ethiopia, including the Society for Human Resources Management here in Ethiopia.
Yes, awesome. Tell me a little bit about the program that you were a part of at BGU, and you know how you developed this concept for the book. And then kind of weave that to you know, the title of your, say, your dissertation project, or how you you know, came to frame the book that we're talking about today. So kind of your experience there at BGU, how that was transformational for you, and then how that resulted in the production of a book that you've now launched.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zachary. I must say that I don't regret having gone through BGU. And I also don't regret having done the Doctor of Transformational Leadership degree program quite a lot. I chose to do the DTL simply because I wanted to have a program that would anchor in the kind of work that I do. I didn't want to do a theoretical degree. I didn't want to do too much detailed research and too much research modules. I wanted a degree that would allow me to integrate and to interact with communities and people and really see how best I can be meaningful and impactful in their own lives. So I must say that being at BGU allowed me to be aware of my environment, but also to be interested in what is happening in my environment. The exegeting process in BGU kind of like, for me, was using the community or working with the community as a lab, where I had to talk to people, where I had to meet people, where I needed to interview leaders who are trailblazing, where I needed to interact, but also I needed also to be sensitive to what God was calling me to in most of my modules, but also in my exegeting of the communities. I came out completely different in the sense that I'm no longer blind to the things that are happening around me. I must say, as I was walking here in Addis Ababa, where I live, sometimes I was overwhelmed by things that I saw, and I had turned blind to certain things and certain situations, maybe that are needy. And with me having gone to meet people in children's homes, in people in needy communities and things like that, my spirit has become more receptive to seeing where there is need, and for me also to be able to respond. So, and that was part of the process through BGU, right from the start to the end. I think each module has a research at the end of it where you actually have to go and apply what you have learned. And each module that I did, I don't really regret. It was really meaningful and impactful to me. And thanks to BGU faculty, and thanks to my supervisors for the research. The research kind of like focused on areas around excellency, but also constructive workplace dissent. I think it's a new area in transformational leadership. Is really how do we focus on excellence and things that we are seeing that are working, and how do we begin to invest them in such a way that we see them being impactful and meaningful today, and being able to focus into the future to be able to then say, with the excellence that we are seeing today in our organizations, in our communities, what is the higher calling? What is God calling us to? Because I strongly believe that we shouldn't be beating ourselves on the chest on the things that are happening today without really seeing what is the higher calling to those things, because I think that is very, very important for us to do that. That also helps organizations to reinvent themselves again and again, and also maybe to be receptive to what God is calling organizations to be doing.
Wow. Well, there's a couple things stood out to me that you're sharing. One is just the thinking about the community or the city as a laboratory where we learn, and having a relationship to like the context that like God has put us in as a learning module for our own lives and our own transformation. You talked about, I think you said this, your focus of your program was transformational leadership. But what I heard you talking about is like you're being developed as a transformational leader, but that transformation is also happening within you. And then, things are, overflowing from that transformation from your life, real things, tangible things in the world, like writing a book. Tell me what's the title of the book that you're launching throughout this year? What's that title of the book?
Okay, so the title of the book is Finding Excellence,
Wow.
a practical guide to fostering goodwill, dissent, and human flourishing at work. I must say that as I was reading and as I was talking to people, God showed me this verse in the Bible, which is Philippians 4, verses 8 to 9. I would be happy to read that. It says, finally,
Yes.
believers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable and worth of respect, whatever is right and confirmed by the word of God, whatever is pure and wholesome, whatever is lovely and brings peace, whatever is admirable and of good repute, if there is any excellence, if there is
Mm,
anything worth of praise, think continually on these things, which means center your mind on them and implant them in your heart. And I really felt that in organizations, there is need for us to take moments to
mm,
reflect and see what is working well. What are the excellencies that we are seeing today in our organizations? Let's speak about these things. Let's discern about them. Let's infuse and infuse them in our organizations, because who knows, this might be our distinctiveness, this might be our DNA. And these are things
mm,
that make us tick. And in doing such a process, it's also very, very important to actually go ahead and really look at what communities say about us and what stakeholders actually saying about us. Because sometimes we might be sitting there and really think, oh, we are angels, we are doing very well. But if we are an institution or an organization that God has placed in a certain community, it's also very important to realize that we have a role to play in that community. It's also important to hear from the stakeholders of that community to really then say, what are the things that are going on well? And then to be able to dwell on those and to reflect on those, I think, like I said, helps us as organizations and institutions to be able to reinvent, but also to remain relevant. The other part actually looks at constructive goodwill dissent.
mm,
In my years until now, I must say that many people and things that I have seen is that people struggle to say things that matter, things that can make organizations tick, things that can help to form the DNA of an organization, simply because sometimes we struggle on how to say those things, simply because people have had experiences where they have been pushed back, simply because people have had experiences where they felt they have been walked over. And in the book, through the interviews that I have had, I have talked to many people to actually hear their stories on how they have practiced constructive workplace dissent in their institutions. There is sometimes silence in the organizations that people don't really see. And when there
mm,
is silence where sometimes the leadership does not see, I think that actually works to the disadvantage of organizations, because I think every talent that is in the organization must have the opportunity to contribute to make the organization tick and to make the organization function. And I think constructive workplace dissent, it's an area that has been maybe, I haven't really like read much about it. And I think it's an area where more investment needs to go. Finding excellences, but also being able to then say, how do we allow our organizations and how do we allow our employees to speak back to us? It's not an easy thing. Also, partly because maybe we as leaders and maybe we as managers have not been taught on how to handle these things because they can throw us off board. And sometimes the things that we can hear are not very comfortable. How then do we handle dissent? How do we then handle constructive workplace dissent? And I think the book kind of like gives many ideas on how people can speak to authority, people can speak to their leaders or their supervisors in such a way that maybe their ideas might be they might be more welcome and more received in a way. So that's kind of like the focus of the book. And I think, like I said, I think this is transformational and it's an area of research, maybe where transformational leaders also need to invest a little bit into going forward.
Yes. So good. So, the thought that comes to my mind is like the dilemma of having a dissenting opinion or experience, and speaking that truth, owning that truth within ourselves as, say, an employee within an organization or a member in a community, and sort of owning that experience or that opinion and then speaking it to power, speaking that truth, our truth to power. The dilemma of that for many people is not knowing how it will be received. There's lots of factors, success factors in finding excellence through workplace and constructive dissent. The reality is your research has been done mostly in an African context. Am I correct?
Yes, it's mainly in an African context. Yes, yeah.
Yes. And so many of the people on, joining us today are somewhere there on the African continent. Talk to me a little bit about what makes constructive workplace dissent, distinct, or what are some of the common causes or challenges there in the African context? Kind of tease out some of the nuance there for us, like what. In the African context, what is constructive workplace dissent? What are some scenarios or what are some examples or common challenges or experiences around constructive workplace dissent?
I can say maybe I can pick maybe two, but also to say that the African context is not homogeneous in itself. I mean,
Yes.
there are also, there are
Good point.
differences depending on which context and which culture, which part of Africa and things like that. I think my experience when I went to work in my first international organization, I remember having a conversation with somebody and I said, we don't do that in Africa. And he looks at me and say, which Africa do you come from? And
That's a
then
great insight.
that's when I realized, oh, we are just as big as who we are as a continent. But there are
Wow.
some things that seem to be common across the continent. And so Africans tend to feel for each other. We tend to share certain common values such as Ubuntu, collaboration, harmony, and maybe healthy interpersonal relationships. Those are some of the things that we want to inculcate, but also things that we want to be known for as a people in Africa. I think some of the challenges that we face when it comes to constructive workplace dissent have to do with most or some of the African cultures are high power distance cultures, which means they place a high value on submission to those people that are in authority. So if you are in a meeting or if you are in a conversation with people that are in authority or people that are your elders, you have to respect them or you are expected. It's an expectation that you would respect them. And in certain cultures, once such a high level person has spoken, then nobody else can speak. It also happens in public administration, in public civil servants, public institutions. When the highest authority has spoken, it happens in diplomacy as well. Then it means nobody else can say anything else. And so the things that we struggle with is actually then being able to then say, how do I speak in a high power distance culture, if that is my culture? in a way. And I think there are quite a number of things that people would have to do when they are speaking to such kind of a high power distance culture. If you have an opportunity, I think people should actually be able to have done much of their research on the issues that they are speaking about, because you don't want to be dismissed immediately, or you must actually be able to show maybe passion about certain things. I give an example in the book of somebody else who actually speaks up in such a culture where they stand up and speak about humanitarian assistance, where the culture of the organizations that are coming to do humanitarian response has been to give relief items that end up with what they would term, this is maybe the crisis phase. And the person was able to speak up, showing evidence that what they are doing actually hurts the communities. Instead, communities must be, yes, they must get fish, but they must also be taught how to fish. And so the person stands up and says that, yes, this is the impact of the short-term assistance that we have, but you could do more if you would also begin to address certain long-term needs. Because oftentimes what we have seen is also the fact that there is so much assistance during the crisis phase. Beyond that, there isn't. And also another example I give in the book is of psychosocial specialists who come in this kind of context, coming from another context. In this case, they are coming from the head office, which is in another continent. And they come and do very, very good work. After they are gone, they don't realize what actually this person who dissented to actually then be able to bring in an innovative idea to their organization was actually to say the reality on the ground and the research and the evidence that I have on the ground is that we need locally trained people to be able to continue with psychosocial support beyond the crisis phase, because this is the reality and these are the needs on the ground. The other thing that I want to say is that my experience is that certain African cultures are synchronic cultures. And so these are cultures that carry their past, or when I think from my experience, sometimes when I go to meetings, when people introduce themselves, they start by telling a story. This is who I was, and I became that, and then I became that, and I became that. Now I am this. If you fail to understand that trajectory, if you are speaking to them about something that is good and giving them an idea without necessarily trying to anchor and appreciate their trajectory, and then coming to your idea, sometimes they dismiss you at face value. You need to be able to understand how they speak and how they introduce themselves and be able to walk that trajectory and then be able to give in your suggestion in a way. The moment you walk in their shoes, the more they see that you are part of them. You are not somebody who is just here to bring in a new idea. And so really being able to understand those cultural dynamics within our own context helps us to be able to speak to power, or helps us to be able to speak in such a way that we are able to convince for transformation or for an idea to be taken in. So I took a little bit longer on that, but yes, these are the two examples that I can give.
So powerful and insightful there, Gorden. What I guess the phrase or term that comes to my mind is just like the emotional intelligence and well-being of being in relationship, whether that's in a personal or professional context with others, and having I think this is a term that I've heard come from you and other conversations we've had, and I think the term is psychological safety. Is that can you speak to this? I feel like this is like a success factor for creating an environment like where people can be able to feel comfortable or confident, or have or maybe even generate the courage within themselves to constructively dissent within their workplace or family system or community. This idea of psychological safety. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Thank you very much, Dr. Zachary. I think psychological safety is very, very important for somebody to be able to speak constructively and for them to be able to dissent. Because if they don't have that safety, if they don't really have that emotional well-being, if they are not prepared psychologically, it's going to be challenging for them to be able to speak, to be able to speak back. And I think several studies have actually shown that it's important for people to have psychological safety in the workplace, because that is the only way that people can be able to speak things in platforms and in forums that are relevant to be heard in organizations. This is because people really know what works and what doesn't work in organizations. When they go out for coffee or when they go out for lunch in groups, they speak the truth. When they go to the water cooler and they meet there during breaks or whatever, they are speaking about things that are happening there. But the moment the supervisor or the moment the leader walks by, people start talking in a different way. So the idea is to be able to work in such a way that organizations build the safety, the psychological safety of organization of their workers to be able to speak truth to them, but also to be able to then show the way and allow that to actually happen in such a way that people really know that they can speak without any adverse consequences. And so leadership and managers are able to assure that there won't be any retaliation. And that people would be able to see that in this organization, we are able to speak, we are able to say these things to our supervisor, because it's important for supervisors to be able to know and to hear from them. And this is where there is a tendency of silence that we leaders don't see in our own organizations, that we don't see in our own institutions, because we assume that things are working well. And I think it's also very important to begin to support voices from the periphery, because there are people who can speak, there are people who are not as forthcoming to speak. How do we as leaders then begin to say everyone is an important puzzle, is an important piece of the puzzle? How then do we begin to then say everybody has gifts and talents? And maybe as a leader, I do have 3 talents, and maybe the 5 talents has the other person who I think it is, and they are in the periphery. If we begin to invest as leaders in finding these people, we definitely would be able to find these people in institutions. People who, when they speak, it matters. We can actually see that when they speak, they have the full concern of the organization, and they speak from their conviction as well. And I think this is very, very important to support those, and also to be able to support them emotionally as well, because some people are not able to stand for themselves. I remember in my work experience working with one Malaysian person who was very good at this, who was able to sit there, who was able to support people to be able to speak, who was able to stop a conversation and be able to say, I think we should let this person complete what they want to say, because it's very important that we hear. And at the end of the day, where somebody has been able to repackage the information to be able to pitch it in such a way that it is acceptable, that kind of like helps people to then say, oh yes, we are part and parcel of giving suggestions as well to the running and the overall management of the institution. So I think it is very, very important to make sure that organizations have this emotional well-being or psychological safety as well.
If somebody is, listening in, I see there's 25 of us here on the call today right now, listening in, 23 people plus us. So say someone is in a leadership role and they're joining the conversation today. They maybe have employees that answer to them, or they're supervising people in their department, in their organization. Any encouragements that come to your mind to be able, if they are like, wow, okay, I like this idea of psychological safety, maybe I've never heard that before, any strategies or just approaches that we can take to better create psychological safety for those around us, or that we're working with in our workplace, maybe in our family system, in our community? How can someone improve psychological safety for those around them? Any strategies come to mind?
I can start by saying that I think for us as people who have gone through BGU and going through these Christian institutions, it's very, very important to know that we are in leadership positions simply because the Lord God has made it possible for us. And we
Wow.
need to understand that we need to have this good relationship, or we need to build a relationship with God. Once we have a good and strong relationship with God, that then can be able to flow out of us to people, so that when we
Mm,
speak to them, we would be genuine in terms of inviting people to be able to take certain pieces of work forward, and to be able to then say to them, we want you to speak the truth about the organization, the truth of what is functioning and the truth of what is not functioning. And when we say that you are an important puzzle of the organization, they need to feel it and they need to sense it. We need to be able to go out to the workflow as leaders. There are certain institutions where maybe people who are on the work floor hardly see a leader. The leader leaves, in the introductory cartoon in my book, you actually see that the person says the leader is always here, or the boss is always here. They are in their office. As long as they are here, you don't have to worry about them. So there are people who are in those high level authorities who never see people who are on the work floor. I think we talk about what I'm trying to recall, the US, the boss who incarnates. Um, I've forgotten the proper term. It's the boss who incarnates in the workplaces where people are working. It's a food chain shop, and they work with the people there, and the people don't actually realize that the boss is here, and they begin to see
oh,
things that are working and things that are not working in that environment.
undercover boss.
Yes, yes, the undercover boss. And so the people who come down from and who take time to invest in really being on the work floor and listening to people, I think
Mm,
um, when we say that, I assure no retaliation, people should actually see that there's no retaliation. It's an open space, and it's an open check, and it's an open invitation. People must be able to sense that. We as leaders and supervisors, we must be able to listen. We must be able to acknowledge. Somebody actually said to me that this was a woman participant that I was talking to. She was saying to me that for women who find themselves in workplaces in Africa, sometimes the issue is that the workplaces are more male dominated and patriarchal, and men are more comfortable in speaking in those spaces. If you realize that if it is in your institution where women feel vulnerable and feel that they are not able to voice themselves in spaces where men are dominant, or when the debate really gets heated, all women are shut up, and then men, um, it's just the men talk. And to
mm,
realize that in institutions where you have young people, youth, where you have women, where you have certain people that are vulnerable, you need to realize as a supervisor to be able to acknowledge, to be able to encourage, to be able to assist emotionally as well. And like I said before, to be also able to support voices from the periphery. Who knows where innovation might come from? It might just
mm,
from that person you think that they are just in the edge, and maybe they have the idea that might serve the organization if you give them the platform to speak.
mm. So good. So it is the responsibility. Like this is one thought that I'm taking away from what I'm hearing you say is like it's the responsibility of the individual person, of me, of you, of the next person, to figure out how to speak our truth to power, how to constructively, uh, have a dissenting opinion or experience, or to bring something forward that maybe the rest of the group isn't acknowledging or aware of. But it's also the responsibility of people in positions of influence and power, whether, at whatever level they're at within the organization, to create an environment of psychological safety, like where people feel more comfortable or are more likely to share their thoughts and experiences and to come forward with those because and in doing that, like what's like the value of doing that within an organization? Because if the organization is just about the bottom line or accomplishing whatever the mission is, and we're all here to do that, so it doesn't matter what you think or feel, let's just get the job done. if like what's the value of not having that approach in business or in say within an NGO or whatever type, a church, whatever type of organization it is. What's the value of doing what you're encouraging us to do? Like what's the outcome? What's the end result? What does it produce within an organization or the world that is beneficial? What makes it worth it, I guess, is a thought that comes to my mind. Can you speak to that a little bit? What's like the end result or the outcome of actually doing what you're encouraging us to do?
I strongly believe that actually helps in what I termed in the book human flourishing, because it's very important that workers and people in organizations are able to flourish in those institutions. I think
Mm,
in the book, I caught somebody who is an industrial psychologist who says that the average person will spend 90,000 hours at work over a lifetime.
wow.
And if people spend such a large portion of their lives at work, shouldn't be human flourishing be very important? Shouldn't psychological safety
Mm,
be very, very important? And also in the book, I caught a survey which was done in 2016 by Deloitte Center for the Edge in 2013, where they said that of 3,159 full-time American workers, the research revealed that only 13% of respondents exhibited all three attributes of worker passion. So commitment to domain, questing, and connecting to disposition. So if you have only 13% and 87% of the people at work are not demonstrating commitment to the mission,
mm,
commitment to the work, they are not searching for anything new. They are not thinking of any higher calling. They are thinking of getting their pay today so that they come again next month and get their pay and things like that. They're just looking at their survival. They are not looking at the
mm,
vision. They are not looking at the mission. They are doing their job description and yes, the things that the boss tells them to do. And that is it. Human flourishing and psychological safety allows people to actually look at the mission of the organization in such a way that when they have safety, this is where the issue about excellence and really being able to move to the higher
mm,
calling and then being able to invest in those pillars of the higher calling and being able to practice and sustain and being able to then say, this is where we want to be in 5 years' time. This is where we want to be in 10 years' time. We don't just exist here in this organization for today. Who knows? We might hand over this company, we might hand over this organization to our grandchildren and things like that
mm,
for it to perpetuate the mission that God called it for in a way. So I think human flourishing is very, very important in the sense that it also looks at the whole issue about how do we support each other as institutions. And I think it is also godly and biblical to support each other in a way. I know in my book, I actually say that critics of human flourishing, psychosocial social support, and joy at work are uninterested. There is a research that I caught in the book that actually looks at the survey in the British supermarkets. The person really says all these ideas are just fancy ideas that don't help anything. If you
mm,
put people under pressure and sit on their head, you actually get the results that you want. Forget about all these things because whether you like it or you don't like it, politics actually simmers in organizations. People are politicking and maneuvering. Why talk about
mm,
all these nice things of human flourishing, joy at work, constructive workplace dissent? Because they think that if you want the results, you still get them. Make people
mm,
work, push them, force them, and things would actually happen in the way that you want. But in my book, I actually propose and I actually advocate. I hear what they say, but I also say that for people to get higher profits and for people to be achieving when they are winning and dismantling inside psychologically in their own person, it's a paradox in a way
mm,
because with people that are happy and people that spend all those hours at work, it also means if people are happy at work, they are also happy in their communities. And that happiness they actually bring from their workplaces, they take this happiness into their families. If they are coming from the work and they are stressed, it's also likely that their families are stressed. It's also
Wow.
likely that they are not participating in the things that matter in their societies, in their communities, whether it's in their churches as well, because their psychological safety isn't there. So I think it's very, very important. I think Baki in his book actually says that it is possible to create happy workplaces. And he cites his company, the Applied Energy Services Corporation, where he says, I quote here, I was CEO of AES, an energy company that by 2002 had plants in 31 countries, 8.6 billion in revenue, 33.7 billion in assets, and 40,000 AES people. In a dozen years of operations, we had developed a highly unconventional workplace culture, joy at work, and also achieved enviable results in a way. And he insisted that funny and joy at work actually helps. And when you have funny and joy at work, it actually touches on many, many other things beyond the work environment itself. And so I think it is very, very important that psychological safety and constructive workplace dissent and these things we talk about in the book are also looked at. So yeah.
So good. Thank you for those insights, Gordon. As you conducted your research, you worked with certain organizations there in were all of the organizations you worked with were they in or are they in Addis, or are they in other parts of Ethiopia, or where are the organizations located that you worked with, or where are they operating?
So the primary focus organizations are Ethiopian, but I interviewed people across the divide. So back graduate students that in Latin America, in Europe, some in India, some in the Middle East, and many scattered across Africa as well. But in terms of the primary focus institutions, I had focused on primarily institutions that are based here in Ethiopia. But the book is informed by wisdom that comes from across the globe. And it is my assumption that much of the things and many of the things that I talk about in the book are applicable across. But also just to say that maybe the limitation might be that it focuses mainly on faith-based organizations, so to speak. But I would really think that people are people, whether they work in the civil service, or they work in the private sector, or they work in the nonprofit sector. Their needs in terms of them being on issues of psychological safety, and the need for them for power and authority to allow them to speak back to them in a constructive way. I think they're applicable across.
Yes, I agree with you on that. And just the desire, whether a person has the language for it or can articulate it or not, the desire for human flourishing is just a fundamental human desire, no matter where you are on the planet or what you're doing for work, in your daily work, what language you speak, ethnicity you are. It doesn't. We all are longing for our hearts desire human flourishing for ourselves and the people that we love, that we work with. That's a fundamental core human need. It's how God has designed us in our humanity. I want you to talk to me about sort of the results of your research. Has anything come out of this research at this point for you where you any tools that you've been able to create to better help us and our organizations be able to assess or better create an environment where there's psychological safety and where creating an atmosphere where human flourishing is happening? Have you been able to produce any tools for us as a result of this research? Anything included in the book that's going to help us that we can utilize and implement in our organizations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Dr. Zachary. I must say that I have not yet developed tools per se, and that might be the next process. However, I must say that the book itself, in terms of reading it, in terms of the sections, it gives practical examples, and it quotes. It has many, many quotes. It has many cartoons. It has many illustrations that people can look at and begin to discern in their own context, to then being able to then say, this is how it plays out in my own organization. So I took the best thing and the best excellences that I had people really saying, this is what works. And I kind of like sifted through the ones that I really felt that stood high above in terms of being able to make impact, something that somebody can read and then say, oh yeah, this is the best example that I can. So I give examples of people who have been working maybe in the banking sector when they dissented on a proposal not to offer a loan to somebody else because they felt it was too risky for the bank, when a lawyer actually dissented in supporting somebody who they really felt that it wasn't really worth really investing their time in supporting. They gave evidence, they argued, they were open about it, and they were able to show. I mean, somebody who argued about a policy in an organization that they felt that it was in the civil service, in the civil service, where they felt that it was detriment to what the organization wanted to achieve. They were able to go and do a little bit more research and gather a little bit more evidence and be able to talk to their colleagues who are at the same level, and were able to convince them. And I think as somebody moves in these spaces, they must also be open-minded, not to come with an idea thinking that what I'm proposing has to be taken and what I'm proposing is going to be taken. If they don't take my idea, then it means I'm not in it. Because when you construct, when you dissent constructively, it's not what you bring is what's going to be taken. You are sharing an idea in such a way that you should also be open to what others might then say and what others might speak, so that we are all able to create something together and be able to come up with something together. It doesn't necessarily mean that every time we would agree with everybody, but it creates that platform where ideas can be heard and where ideas can be shared, and where people can say, I have contributed, whether my idea was taken in or not. So not coming in with the idea that what I have is what it takes. What everybody else has does not matter. Everybody's idea matters.
Yes, I agree. Is there like a framework or something that's come out of this for you that is that that you could share with us, like so like a mental model or something that you've been able to create from this work that I don't know, in the heat of the moment, is there something that I can remember? I can think back. Gorden taught me this. Gorden told me to think this is now I really need it. When there's high conflict in my organization, or I find myself in a difficult conversation, is there something I can come back to that I can quickly remember or recall that's going to help me create this kind of environment in my organization?
Okay. Thank you very much. In the book, I actually came up with two frameworks, I think,
Okay.
in the book. There is one that has to do with excellence, which I call the AHIP framework. So E is for the excellences that we're talking about. The need to invest in the excellences in our employees, but also in our organizations. Oftentimes, or sometimes, people remember people for the things when they flopped, but it's flipping the coin and actually beginning to remember people in terms of where they excelled. Because the more we amplify that voice of where people and institutions and organizations are excelling, the more we are likely to excel, the more we are likely to create more excellences in our organizations. So the E is the excellence. And then It's HIP framework. So E is the excellence, the H is the higher. So with the excellences that we find in our institutions, all I say is that we shouldn't bask in the glory of the excellences of today. We must always be seeking then what is the higher calling? What is God calling us to in these excellences, in these areas where we are excelling, in these areas where the workers are actually excelling. And even me as a worker to say, these are areas where I hear very good feedback. How can I move higher and steps higher beyond what I am doing? So what is God calling me higher than where I am today? Yes, I'm doing well, but what is the higher calling? And then the I, so EHIP, the I is actually the need to invest and resource. So if we define what the higher calling might be, the need is that we should actually be able to invest and resource those. I think in the book, I actually caught somebody else who actually said the richest place on earth is the grave, because people have ideas. If you actually know how many ideas that have been buried with people in their graves, there is actually many ideas than ideas that were actually implemented. Many things that we needed to do, many books that were never written, many songs that were never sang, many things that we needed to do because we knew we wanted to do them, but we never invested and we never resourced. So it's very, very important for institutions to be able to invest and resource. And I think as the last part is EHI, the P is actually the practice and the sustaining. The things that we begin to focus into the future, as futurists actually do, is actually begin to practice them now and be able to build those pillars and be able to sustain them in the future and begin to try some of them now if there is a possibility, because that's the only way things can become to be realized in a way. And then the other framework that I had, it doesn't have like an abbreviation, but actually I came to realize that Goodwill, emotional psychological safety can lead to goodwill descent, and goodwill descent can lead to human flourishing, because then there are no ideas hidden under the carpet, and the cycle can go back and forth like that, back and forth. And those are kind of like the two takeaways that I want maybe participants on this call to be able to take home in a way.
So good. Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for sharing that with us. If somebody's on the call with us today, they want to figure out where they can find the book, where what formats is it in? Where could they go easily to access the book?
Okay. So I can share the links, but it is now on Amazon. So they can actually get a copy on Amazon, but also they can order it directly with the publisher, Westboro Publishers themselves. If they just Google, the links would actually come out. And it comes both in, there is also an electronic version. So they have an option whether they want a hardcover, or they can just buy an electronic version of the book. And so it is really readily available in a way. Maybe I can just paste and I can find and paste this in as we are talking in the
Yes, in the
chat
chat.
box. And
That would be great.
I can also, let me see if I can see this. I'm trying to, yes, in the chat box. Yeah.
Looks like one person there shared the link to Westboro Press. So if you're on the call and you want to follow that link and or copy paste it, you can check that out. That's perfect. I'm just looking through the comments here too. Many folks just saying great work, proud of you, blessings. Is there a suggested feedback evaluation questionnaire template in the book that could help organizations? I think that's something that you probably are working on, and you shared a little bit about the frameworks there with us. And look at this question here. Do you see the one? Is there good or bad? How do you say that word? That phrase. What is your reflection on extending term limits trend in Africa? Do you think International Instruments Act as by law or act in line with the institutions they're affiliated with? How can we correct them?
Okay. So the person is asking something to do with governance in Africa. So we
Yes.
have been experiencing unconstitutional change of governments or coup d'etats in Africa. And what is your reflection on extending term limits trends in Africa, which basically extending term limits for people that are in power or people that are leading our countries, could be prime ministers or presidents. Do you think international instruments as by law or act in line with institutions they are affiliated with? Can we correct them? I must really say this is the kind of like a personal view myself. I believe that extending a term because it's Gordon who is there, and because Gordon is supposed to be leaving the office at the All Africa Conference of Churches where he's working, maybe in July next year, simply because of me. Um, I mean, morally, I think when my time to go comes, as per the Constitution, um, I must go. And I must know that countries and organizations continue to function, whether I am here today or I am not. I am happy my colleagues who are here today from my institutions, I remember three of them reminding me that you are here to work today, Gordon. Remember, if you drop dead today, tomorrow the organization would run. Certainly be
Mm,
assured that that is what would happen, because where we see people wanting to extend their term of limits is because there is also the thinking that I can't go now because the organization or the country is not at a point where maybe a transition can actually happen. But I think if the
mm,
Constitution says that transition has to happen, I think transition has to happen in a way. That's just my personal thought. I know people have different ideas and different thoughts, and I think people have also been hearing different certain things where people have been pushed or people have been forced to stay in power, and people have said that I could not go because I couldn't, even if I wanted to go. When
mm,
we go, there is a forum which is called this Brother Absalom. We have been together to the Tana Forum on peace and security, where former presidents and former ministers of foreign affairs and many other people come. I think you would remember that one of the questions that are asked former prime ministers and former presidents is if there is one thing that you would regret now what would it be? I think most of them have said, I think I should have gone when I felt I needed to go.
mm,
And I don't really think that it's, yeah, and that's what I feel. When time comes, whoever has to go has to leave. Because whether we like it or not, at some point we would not be here on earth anymore.
mm. It's a good word. It makes me think of just the concept and belief that a position of power or influence, leadership is a mantle, and that mantle is made for movement. It's not ours to own; it's ours to steward, and so that mantle is passed on, to the next generation, the next leader, um, and so how we steward that mantle is so important. Well, great work, Gordon. So proud of you, brother. I can just see all the encouraging, statements of those that are on the call with us today that have been here with us, and um, just encouraging you and testifying to your excellent leadership. Um, you are a man of God. You are an inspiration to us. Most people, don't write a book. Most people on the planet aren't ever going to write a book. And so, congratulations to you for being resilient and pushing through and producing a work that is so important and that captures so many concepts and behaviors that can truly improve people's lives and workplaces and produce human flourishing. It's an inspiration to us, and we're proud of you. I want to go ahead and end our call and just be respectful of your time today and everybody else's that's joined us. I want to thank every single person that came and participated today, and hope this has been an encouragement to you and edifying to you, and strengthening your leadership at whatever level you lead others and have influence. Gorden, we're part of a Christian organization. BGU is a faith-based institution, and I just want to say a prayer for you today before we end our call. Is that okay?
Thank you. Yeah,
So,
thank you, Dr. Zachary.
God, I just lift up our brother Gorden to you right now in this moment, and thank you for your favor and your blessing on his life and this book that he's written. These words are inspired, and we just pray that they will go forth in written form and verbally as Gorden shares in different environments about the research that he's done, that these words will penetrate the hearts and minds of leaders, of people in positions of power and influence, and that these words will create workplaces where there is psychological safety, and where there is human flourishing that comes about in deeper and more impactful ways for many people, not only in Gorden's community, but all around the world. We just pray for effectiveness of this research, of this book, that it will go forth. Many people will read it. Many people will be impacted by this work. And we just thank you. We come into agreement with success around this book and Gorden's life and work and calling. And we thank you for the human flourishing in Gorden's life. And we thank you for the success of this book. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, brother. It's been a pleasure to just have a conversation with you today. And it makes my day. I'm just starting my day out. I'm in a hotel room in Dallas, and I've got meetings for my organization that I work as CEO or COO for, in a second chair role, helping to lead in this organization of Milwaukee Graduate University. And I just thank you for your time. It's been a blessing to me, and I'll just be smiling the whole rest of the day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zachary, and thank you all colleagues for joining in today. I'm grateful.
All right. Grace and peace to everyone. I'm going to end this call today. Have a wonderful day. Make sure you click that link. I'll let the chat stay up here for about one more minute. Go ahead and click that link. And all right, Gorden, I'll talk to you later, brother. Have a wonderful day. Rest of the day.
Wow, good to see your faces. Now people are showing up. Oh, wow.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Wow,
Thank
wow,
you.
wow,
Thank you.
wow, wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yes.
Gorden. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, dear brother. Thank you. Wow.
Congratulations,
Thank
Gorden.
you,
Oh,
Gorden.
thank you. Thank you.
Congrats,
Wow.
Gorden.
Thank you,
Oh,
Gorden.
thank you. Oh, wow. Thank you. Oh, I'm getting emotional. Oh, wow. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, we are out of here. Thank you.